Hey everybody, this is Petey from Spirac, and today we have the comic book hero. Comic book hero, talk to our viewers.
Once again, comic book hero Calvin Ellis with a great assist from the selector PD. And we're going to be addressing a couple of issues that I saw popping up at the last show that I did. And PD wisely said, "Hey, let's bring in some comic book men because we love to make fun of these guys." So let's go right at it.
Well, you had an experience because you had a show. I'm not sure if you want to talk about which show it was, but
Just did a show the other day. I just did a show the other day, and it was not. It wasn't a very good show. Not a lot of collectors there, and I don't go to shows to sell to other sellers. I go to shows to sell to collectors. That means these are guys, and mind you, when I say you're a collector, you're somebody who collects comics. You want to build a collection. You're looking for particular issues. You're not, you are coming there, okay, not because you think you're going to like the secondhand discount store, but you're going there to hope to find books that you wouldn't normally be able to find at a store, okay, online. And hopefully, yeah, of course, you want to get some good deals at the end of the day, but you're not coming there to rummage, like rummage through somebody's stuff. So that's why I do a show. But these cats who came out for the last show, unfortunately, were a kick the tires crowd. And when that happens, then you get a lot of dealers who come out and they're trying to look through your stuff to see if they can find something that's priced low enough, to make
let
money
me
on.
let me stop you for a second. You say kick the tires. You mean they want to test it first, something like that?
Because we had all this time where there weren't any cons because of COVID. A
Mhm.
lot of guys, aren't with okay. Well, what's the price of Wolverine #1, the first limited series, Frank Miller art, Chris Claremont story. The last time I checked, that was going for say $50 in near mint condition. Let me go to a show and I can see what the price on it is now. And unfortunately, I mean, there'll be a bunch of anecdotes I could share, but one anecdote is this guy who, and I mean, he has the wherewithal because he's bought some comics. So, and his wife, is totally on board, which a lot of guys have an issue with. But his wife tells him, "Hey, look, there's a copy of Incredible Hulk 181, and it was maybe like $2,000 or something of that nature, a graded copy. I don't remember the grade, but she tells him, look, there's a copy of Hulk 181, $2,000. You should buy it." And he looks at it and he's like, "Nah, I'll get it later. I'll wait. Price goes down or something of that nature," because he felt he was just spending too much money on it. So time passes and he looks at the price on Hulk 181 sometime later, not too much later, maybe 6 months later, and it's nearly double the price. So of course he's slapping himself now. He's like, "Stupid, stupid, stupid. I should have went and bought it." But that's the mentality with a lot of the comic guys. I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna kick the tires and see what the price is right now. I don't like that price. I'll come back later and see what it is. But then, unfortunately, and this has been the history of comics as long as I've been buying them, the price tends to go up. It doesn't tend to go down on the good stuff, and everybody wants the good stuff. So now you got the same guy. "Hey, remember that book you had for $50? You still have it?" Like, no, it's not $50 anymore. Unfortunately, the price went up.
So what was there was something that happened to you there, right? Was there something that happened to you there? I know that that was a good assessment of the kick the tires. What was the thing that happened to you?
Well, I'm there at the show, and unfortunately, I got to deal because there aren't a lot of collectors there. You have, you make money if you get other dealers, and dealers do this all the time. They'll go to, other guys. They'll look through their stuff to see if they find some stuff that they want. If it's priced low enough that they can make money on it, it's fine. So I usually have, my boxes arranged, and there's, the cheaper boxes, which dealers are always rummaging through, because they're trying to save as much money as they can. So this guy goes through the box, and these are like $5 books. All right. And I know the guy too. So he saw some of the books were packaged two in a bag. So he says, "So what's the deal with these if they're packaged two in a bag?" I said, "Those are still, it'll still be $5. So you're getting some of the books he was going to get for $5 each. Others he was getting two for five.
Hmm.
So he gets a reasonable stack of books. I told up the price, and the price is say like $90. And he's like, "Oh, well, can you give me a bundle deal since I'm buying the books? And can we do $80?" And I nearly lost it with him. And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me. You have just, how much money have you just saved? You're getting some books two for five." You're getting other books that are worth at least $10 for $5, and you still need to save more money. I was like, am I not supposed to leave here with anything? What, I came out here to do what? To help you make a profit? So that mentality of a lot of the comic guys who have, I mean, and but again, this is something that happened before I got into it, where these guys are always selling, I mean, rather, they're always trying to look to save as much money as possible. And it translates to the buyers or some of the collectors as well. I mean, right now, a near mint copy of Wolverine #1, let's just use that as the book from the limited series. A near mint copy will cost about $200. $200. So, a guy may come over and for whatever reason offer you the book and say, hey, look, I'll give it to you for $100. Most people would say that's great. I'm saving, 50%. It's a $200 book. I'm saving $100. That's great. Nothing more needs to be said. Unfortunately, I've experienced a mentality where even at $100, the guys are still like, well, can you go 80? And then they'll always back this up with this nonsense. Well, you never know. And I'm like, what is it that you're trying to find out? If this guy's a sucker at this point, that's a great deal. You should jump on it at the end of the day. But the need to somehow save an additional $10, $20, so on and so forth. I hope this is like I really hope that show I was at, I'm experiencing the last vestiges of it, since we got a lot of new blood coming into the comic market right now. But that was, yeah, that sort of thing. I had to experience that at the last show, and it was just mind numbing at the point, because for some reason, they're in the belief that you're going to sell them the books regardless. That I won't stop and say, you know what, I don't want to do this deal. I'm gonna take these books back. You go find a better deal someplace else, and we just leave it at that. Or that you won't kill a deal. You're about to double, if not triple, your money based on the purchases that you're about to make, and you're willing to kill a deal to save an extra $5 or $10. It's just bad. It's just a bad practice at the end of the day. But it stems from a long time practice of, I mean, I've seen these guys where they're trying to hammer these guys down to like 70, to like, see if they can get 75% off of whatever this person is putting at, really trying to nickel and dime them, really negging on whatever it is that they have. But it's just an annoying thing, especially when you're dealing with someone who knows the business. So I understand if you're going with somebody else who, you're trying to buy from someone who's just unloading their collection, or the books belong to someone else and they're just really getting rid of them because they don't have the space. But you're dealing professional to professional, and I know the value of the books, and you're still gonna try to, go for like an extra 5 or 10. It's just poor practice at the end of the day. And it also shows just a poor ability to be able to sell. Because anyone who sells well would know that, okay, I'm going to make tons of money on this. I don't really need to save another $5 or $10. It's just ridiculous.
When I was looking for something to connect, it's hard to pull out a specific episode of Comic Book Men because most of the time people are bringing them their books. But I mean, I'm not gonna play it. But we have this person over here who brought in these collectibles for Dawn of the Dead. It's like a
Yeah.
poster for the Australian title. I guess it's called Zombies, and he had the poster here too, the Dawn of the Dead poster. So it was like, and he asked 1,000 for it. Now, since Walt, who's has a comic book man shirt, didn't know, he called in his friend who knows this stuff and caught some glaring things that was with this, that the poster was the Australian poster, so it wouldn't fetch as much. It's not mounted, it's rolled. So ultimately, I think he said high end $200. So the guy said 1,000 total, and this, no, I think it's, no, I think might have went more. I think he might have went more than that. So then you had these things, which he said be 25 each, less than what the guy was saying. So that would be 300. So it'd be like a total like $500 on the high end. But at the same time, I think he's more telling Walt that you're gonna have to work to sell this at a high price. But you could get that type of money, but he's
That's
kind of telling what the low end is. But the hard part of it is that when it's 500 is a price that Walt would go for this stuff. It's not out of what he would normally do. But basically saying, basically this guy without saying is saying you're gonna have to work to sell this. So, but you can make your money because he's giving them decent. He's saying it's not what it is, but he's saying 200 and then 300, and I was just like, what the hell? That's he Walt gives us 70%. He goes like his first bid is always like 60 to 70% lower. So that's he's like you almost hurt Walt's originally. The guy says 1,000, he say 200, and because you're squirming because you need money, usually you take it. And that's from the dealer end, I get that. It's a little different from being a dealer meeting a dealer and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to take this off your hands." It'll be something off of his wall and saying, "Hey, I want that skull in the back," and then you tell him, "I'll take it for $5." So what do you mean? This is a collectible, this, that, and the other. 10. That's the sort of the assessment.
Well, see, you can't trust these guys because they work together.
Mm-hmm.
So you could bring a poster. I know, I mean, my collectibles knowledge spans across the board. So I have a little bit of knowledge in all this thing. I mean, as soon as I saw it and I saw that it was rolled, I already knew they're going to hit him for that. They're going to hit him for it not being mounted like a regular, like an actual poster, which most people don't even know. They may have just bought the poster and they said, I'm going to keep it safe, which is always good. But then, that those are the person who decided, oh, I'm going to put it in a frame and I'm going to do this. That becomes the high end of the collectability of the poster. So I already knew they're going to hit him because it's rolled. They'll hit him for any of the damage. The Australian thing, however, may make the poster more valuable because there may be less of the Australian title, okay, than the other one. So you got to trust what these guys are saying. And remember, this guy's already trying to get this from you for a lower amount. So they're not going to tell you anything positive about your stuff. They're not going to tell you anything positive. They're going to come over here and they're going to, hit you with all this stuff. Oh, this is bad. That's bad. They're trying to hit your confidence at the end of the day. And then it's just like you said, you'd be like, oh, wow, I wanted 1,000. All this is wrong with it. Oh, I guess you'll be doing me a favor just to get 200. And you have to always remind yourself that, hey, if this is so bad and so horrible, why is he willing to give me $200 for it? As a rule of thumb, if he's willing to give me 200, that means he's at least going to make 400 off of this. So okay. But it depends on the position that you're in. Sometimes you're in a position where you can stand your ground. I'll try to get a better price. Other times, you need the money, so you're going to take what going to take what you get. And it also depends on how knowledgeable you are. Okay, but those guys, I'm going to call my friend who knows something about it. Those guys are double teaming you. Guys tried to do that to me once. I had a collector's book, and guy said he wanted it. See, let me call him his friend. His friend slated my book. Everything was wrong with it. It's got color touch. It's got this. It's got that. It's horrible. It's horrible at the end of the day. And I'm looking at him like, dude, we do the same type of business. You think I don't know what it is that you're doing right here? You think I don't know what it is that you're doing? But to somebody who's not in the know, yes. Once they break that confidence, hey, you're like, hey, $50? Can I get 50?
He did falter a little, but at the same time, he held and took his stuff back. But they tried to get on him because he came with it in a suitcase. But at the same time, you got to be able to take your stuff back. And they got so much stuff at Statch, and they're sitting on Kevin Smith money. So, but all right, I want to get an assessment. I got this from my friend Reggie. He knows his real name. And how much is this worth?
You gotta turn a little bit more to the camera. So I can't see it.
It's a
okay.
L.
That's an L.
Jessica Alba. There's belly at the bottom. Sorry.
Oh man. It's probably not worth much at all. Magazines.
Oh, so this is this is one of those things you find in the store, and the guy giving it away.
that's a different thing. It's like you have comics
Score.
And then you got those prints. I mean, it's worth a lot if Jessica Alba comes to life, but aside of that, I don't think. Yeah, because you got the magazine, Elle magazine. Certain of those magazines retail very well, but in terms of collectability, magazines they print thousands, in some cases millions of copies. So it becomes really hard to get a lot of money for them. National Geographic is something that educated me to that years ago.
Yeah. So I guess, is there anything else I was thinking about for this? Ultimately, so you're saying at every show, what's the percentage of having to deal with these dealers?
If it's a
You?
if it's a bad show, you got to deal with those guys.
Because there's not a lot of collectors,
And then these, whatever. Like, it's tough because these are the guys that you have to keep a working relationship with them because you never know. You might be able to make a good sale. But for the most part, if it's the same guy, you see them before and they're always raiding your $5 box, you're like, yo, come on, dude. Especially if they're always raiding the $5 box. It's like, how long have you been at this? You haven't made any money yet? They've never made an offer on a big book. After a while, it becomes like, look, I really don't want to deal with you. And you raiding my $5 box. There's a $2 box over there. Why don't you go raid that? Or I scared them off at one. Well, there was one guy who came. I think this was his third show I have done with this, and this guy was there as well. So he's coming out, he's raiding the $5 box. And he's like, well, you got any more Star Wars books? I'm like, yeah, I got more, but those are the more expensive box over here. So he goes and he's picking out the best books. And of course, he's like, well, how much is this book? And I'm like, this dude spent all this time in the $5 box. I said, that one's $50. So he puts that one back. He's like, what about this one? And I was like, okay, I don't need to be bothered with this guy anymore. He heard $50 and he put it back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I said, this guy's a lightweight. I say he's looking for $5 books that he can mark up to 20, 30, maybe as much as 50. Here's a $50 book. He's putting it back. I was like, forget it. I'm not going to make any money with this guy. So at that point, every book became $50 for him. I was like, yeah, all of those are 50. He took the $5 book. He was on his way. And I was like, great. Because to be honest, I don't mind, look, if you're coming and that's where you're at, no problem. But I am not here to facilitate you making money. I'm trying to make money myself. And if you can't, if the only books you can come to afford, the only books you can afford to come to me and buy are these, that's great. But when those books, I didn't come here to make $5 an hour. So that's pretty much where it's at. You don't have any, they're not looking to, I will go to guys who I buy from. And these guys have great stuff, and they give me very good deals, but I'm a better buyer. I'm going to throw down $1,000 or $2. I'm going to buy a bunch of stuff and I can sell it. So I can always come back and say, hey, look, I want to spend some more, this type of stuff, and they'll get good stuff and you get really good deals on it. But if I'm coming to this guy and every time I'm like, hey, I'm only buying something that's $5, that's time. That's time at the end of the day. You spent half an hour with this guy. That's less than if he was working minimum wage or something. So you've got to, you got to facilitate something. If you want better deals, then you got to, you have to actually buy some books. And if the only thing you're going to do is come and raid the $5 bin, and after you raid it, which for books that are already discounted, and you need a further discount, then maybe you need to be in another field. You may need to be in another field, or not do it at a show with someone else who is doing the same thing as you.
Yeah, it's seeing. I was only seeing it on the deciding to sell they either seeing friends of mine. Well, I at this point I kind of what was it it's seeing them break sort of people's hearts. It's kind of going with the gold type of thing. If I were to sell something and see how that goes. But a lot of times I've seen people go in that are, into comic books or just getting into it, and they immediately go to hey, I'm going to sell these. And then people say, oh, that's all terrible. And it's like, one thing is I felt, because when we had, we had friends that did this and people come back upset. So
yeah, Dixon.
Well, he was in the neighborhood would come back upset, but I was thinking I've seen not just Dixon, but some of the other guys do that, and it's like one of the things that you should
They wanted to, these guys are angry enough. I heard about this. They were angry. They wanted to fight Dixon.
So I mean, it was one of those things where I'm thinking, and I seen the comic guy do it too, and I was thinking he should just be like, and not other stores, not just like the Avenue H Comics. It was like other stores where they'd be like, hey, and say, hey, all right, these ones aren't really selling at this point right now, but there's some other books you can look at, stuff you can kind of see that's kind of going. There's a couple other books here that you can kind of see what's moving, so you can kind of plan if you're looking to be more of a collector than reader, that sort of thing. So you know what to grab, and so you say, hey, number one. And that's always good to have a number one, but you never know when that number one's going to be the big thing. Like, oh, I bought, what's that thing? Dark Knight number one, this, that, and I bought Outcast number one. And from both from DC. And it's like, oh, this Outcast ain't moving. Like you feel like, hey, I got cheated by DC. I got a number one and it didn't move. Like, no, actually no. But anyway,
Well, the market, a lot of it's tough because I don't. I came into reading comics at a certain age, and I don't mean like age in terms of years, but like the comic age, where you have Silver Age, Bronze Age, Modern Age, Copper Age, that sort of stuff. So I came in at a certain age, but I for me the big thing was reading the stories. That's what got you in. You would hear about this, that. I remember I started reading Daredevil because Dixon was I think Dixon was passing that around. Like, did you read this? And that's how I got into it. And I don't know how many people, I don't know how many other people who got into it as well, but that's how I started reading it. So when it came time to actually, because I was a toy seller before I was a comic seller, and toy guys have money because there's no dollar bin for toys. Probably said this before. There's no dollar bin for toys. There's no, hey, go through this box and every toy in here that's it's still in its package is $1. You have to have money to buy these toys. And the money that the guys would drop down, we're talking like $500,000 for some of these toys because you can't find them anymore. That's what I was used to dealing with. There was no haggling. There was just no haggling. Where that was the price. The guy bought it or they didn't buy it for the most part. They made, and there was no nickel and dime. Oh, look at the condition here. Look at this. Like, look, do you want this or not?
well,
Okay, that was a large part of it. But comic guys, totally different thing, and it's also because the collectibles market was different. Where comic guys pretty much got looked at as like, oh, what are you guys wasting your money on that for? The big things were cards. Those are the guys who were throwing down. I mean, those guys had money. They were throwing down money for the baseball cards or whatever the type of cards may be. And then you have now a lot of that money power shifting over to comics, where you still have some of these remnants of the guys who go out and so have that Turkish bazaar thing where they're like, okay, I'm going to come. I'm really not too sure how valuable this is, but if you're trying to sell it to me, I'm going to try to get it for the lowest possible price because I'm
yeah.
not sure. And then the other guy like, well, I don't want to pay too much either because that sort of thing. So you got that stuff. You have a lot of that going on. But it'll be a book like Wolverine #1, which is online selling for $200. So at a show, you're asking for 100, and the guy's like, well, can you do 80? And it's like, where, what world are you coming from? So those things still have yet to me, especially after this whole thing happened with these shutdowns thanks to COVID, where a lot of the prices quadrupled in amount. And these, like I said, they're coming out kicking tires to see where stuff is at, and that's where it's at. Now, some of those books may shoot up and come back down, but a lot of the ones, like the key books, as they like to call them, they're not going anywhere because somebody spent $2,000 on this book. They want to, they're either holding it because they want it, or if they're looking to as an investment, they're not going to part with this book until they know they can get their money back and then some at the end of the day. And then you look at you saw the latest thing with Amazing Fantasy 15 that went for 3.6 million.
No, I think you might have said it. I don't know the article.
Yeah, amazing. Well, here's how Amazing Fantasy 15 went for $3.6 million. It was a graded CGC copy, but it was a 9.6. Right? It was a 9.6. That's a very high grade for Amazing Fantasy 15. And it's an incredibly high grade for a book like that. And it went for $3.6 million.
So of course they do the whole thing. Move over, Superman. Spider-Man's here. Then I'm like, wait, hold your horses. That was a 9.6. Okay, so that's a very high grade. But now, if you have a copy of Action Comics 1, if it's a 9.0 or better, because I've never seen that high of a grade for Action Comics, never. But if you have a 9.0, you're gonna be like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm not gonna sell this book, for less than what that Amazing Fantasy went for. This is the first appearance of any superhero. I'm not selling it for less than X amount. And those drive prices up as opposed to it. Because the guy's gonna argue, like, there's no way I'm gonna come over here and sell it for less than this at the end of the day. Okay, but again, that was a 9.6. It went for a few $100,000 more, but that tends to drive the price because it shows you that the ceiling isn't where people thought it was at all. And that transitions all the way down to those regular books and when you get to the shows. So I understand you're going to a show and you're hoping to get some good deals, but a lot of these guys are going to a show with a couple $100, hoping to walk out with a short box full of books. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And not right now. Not now, maybe not ever. Well, yeah, more than likely, no. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to, if you're serious about the collecting, then you really have to know how to approach it so you can get some really good deals. But you have to have some money. It might mean saving up, for the bigger shows or saving up for a particular show, but you need to have the money so you can get the whole thing. And then it also depends on what type of buyer you are, because I'm going and I really have to hustle going out. I don't try to buy from other dealers mostly, but I'll go out, I see a good deal or somebody's buying some stuff. Okay, great. Go over, you have to buy it. You have to really, itemize everything. And then if you make good money overall, then you can offer great discounts on books. But a lot of the guys, they're not necessarily looking to do that. They're like, oh, how much is this? Is it a $10 book? So you have all of those different things going on right now, and then they filter into the show. But what can I say? It was a bad show.
Well, I was looking at that thing for Amazing Fantasy that you were mentioning, and let me bring it back up. One of the things that I think that one of the things that's going on with comic books and sales and all that stuff, because some of this stuff isn't that well, this might also bring some more notoriety to, I forget what it is, like CGC. Is that the one that's made it's a CGC one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so CGC. So it's like, that doesn't mean that the Batman #1 and 9-4 or the Action or this Detective, these ones are done. The pricing is all over the place, but when the price goes up, that means all these other books are gonna go up. It's like when you get the next Batman come up again, it's gonna be insane.
Yeah.
It's the same with the original art. It's like, okay, once you like what was it it's hard to even mention it, because because going to the original art, you have the Burn X-Men that's selling, in the hundreds of thousands. And then they had the Burn Fantastic Four, the whole issue. And they sold every issue separate. And each of those are tens of thousands, and a couple that may be in the thousands. And it's just like, we've gone too far as what people will buy. And then sorry to say, because the art people said it online. They said it that a lot of these guys are guys that are the amazing stories type of people that will not sell until the last minute. They will let their house fall apart, and this is to be different from, say,
They'll be living in their auto.
Yeah, this is different from an original artist not getting work and needing to like hawk off things, because that's what they want to go to. But if they're in the market that they can't hold on to this stuff, and they can't keep then there's just people that have these ridiculous amounts of money that are able to buy it. But it's not even the guys that regularly deal in original art and comics that are buying these things. It's just someone that's putting in their thing. Like, oh, this is a commodity. I got it now, so I'm keeping this.
Well, yeah. For some of the, I told the, I mean, this guy pointed it out that when it was baseball cards, some
Mhm.
of these baseball cards, the ones that everybody was after, these things would sell for $4,000 or $5,000 easy. It
Yeah.
was a graded card, $4,000 or $5,000. So these guys, you go into comics and they're like, oh, what's the top grade? A 9.8? How much are they asking for it? 500? Oh, that's nothing. That's nothing. I'm willing to throw down 5, 6 grand, on something or other. So that's where it is. And that's why it rises, because you've got people with more wherewithal coming at it. But I mean, what you would usually happen is that, I mean, it's exactly what you said. Most of the guys who are buying this type of stuff, when you're buying Action Comics 1 or Amazing Fantasy 15, few people are buying that looking to resell, because that's a really, I mean, if you are, that's a really big investment of, when you're talking millions of dollars. Most of them really want it, which means it's going to sit someplace until it finally makes its, it works its way out. And
Mhm.
by the time it does, it like, okay, when was the last time we had a copy of Action Comics, 1 or Amazing Fantasy 15 for sale? Might be years before you get another one, out there. And of course, that's going to drive the price. But again, we're going to look back and say, well, what did the last one sell for? All right, well, of course, I want to sell, that's going to be the starting price.
Yeah.
That's going to be the starting price on whatever comes out. So, but a lot of those, like the Amazing Fantasy 15, those type of books, they stay in collections for years and may never make it out before they come back out again. So, but I look at this overall now. It trickles all the way down. You find the copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. Are you going to sell it in? Are you going to sell it in ungraded condition? Maybe, but if you do, you're going to ask a ton of money for it, because whoever is going to be looking to get this book more than likely is going to look to grade it to make more money, or you grade it and you look to make whatever money that you can off of it. But it drives everything up. The problem with comics, though, is that it used to be those were the only books you could depend on for money. Action Comics 1, Amazing Fantasy 15, X-Men #1, Incredible Hulk 181. Now you got a whole bunch of other stuff that did you ever read Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel?
No, never.
It was a 5-issue series Marvel put out where they introduced this character, Adam Brashear,
Hmm.
the Blue Marvel. Pretty much he's like a Marvel Superman analog, and he's black. So they brought this guy out. Now with all this talk of a black Superman coming over with DC, guys have been throwing all this money at that book. Now, mind you, that was already a popular book, because I would get my hands on copies and sell that for really good money at the end of the day. But now that's a book in ungraded condition. It's going for $1,000. They're asking $1,000 for it at the end of the day. And you're like, okay. And for me, I was like, all right, who's paying for this? Because it's not a comic guy. It's not a comic guy at the end of the day. Because most guys didn't even know this book existed. No, it's other guys who have come into it and they were like, hey, why should I chase after these baseball cards? I'm coming over here, I'm spending 4, 5, 6 grand on a baseball card. How long am I going to have to wait for that to turn over? The rate of appreciation is going like 10, 20% per year. But the comic market, these guys don't know what the hell they have. These prices are so low. Now, of course, this is somebody with some money, but this guy's looking at it like, how much? Oh, you only want $1,000? That's better than me spending 6 or 7. That's a low price. And I could sit on that and then maybe in a year's time make my money back as opposed to waiting 5. It's great.
Well, the comic book stores at one point used to push back, you know, on different things. They pushed back on reprints. They didn't know it, you know. I had something that what was it? I think it was a Tim Vigil with Faust, and it would be in the, the price guide for X amount of dollars. And then the person was like, it wasn't worth anything. And I was like, he said, I can, he said, you could just give it to me if you want to. It's like, no, why would I do that?
Yeah, why would I give it to you for free?
Yeah, so it was like, that's one of those things where people are, it's like, but they would do that at times, and sometimes they would either be right or wrong. But some things like the Blue Marvel, and I know he rates well on the battle boards, but it's just like some of the stuff really shouldn't be.
No,
Oh, Jessica Jones has a TV show. Alias goes up to $300.
that was
Rated.
That was the mentality of all the collectors. If you went back to around the 90s, comic guys got the shaft.
They were like, oh, those things are worthless. Worthless. You know, it's only like 4 or 5 books that are worth any money, and the rest of them aren't. And then you had these guys who came in, like Wizard, I know was a big part of it too, and would change the landscape in terms of how the collecting went. Because a lot of the guys used to collect for the stories. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you got to get this to get a complete set. You got this run. Okay, great. No, forget all that. Do it like how the card dudes do it. We're gonna just look for the covers, the great cover art, the first appearances, the rarest books, the error, any of the errors. It was like, so it took time, but eventually they transitioned comics instead of just treating them more like trading cards than books. And then the other thing is they're trying to treat it like a book when they're like, oh, first printings. But you can't do that with a book. That works to a certain extent, okay? Because these guys always go back. If it's like Moby Dick, there's like what? God knows how many printings of Moby Dick there have been. Comics don't work that way. You know, it's rare that comics get like more than one or two printings. But they said, oh, we're looking for the rarest book, the rarest book at the end of the day. So it could be that issue one came out and had 30,000 copies printed. That sold well, so they said, let's go back to a second printing. But the second printing was like 4 or 5,000 copies. Automatically, the second printing is the rare book. And these guys pushed for so long. Oh, first printing. And then people came in. And these are cool. These are like the baseball card collectors. They're coming in and like, what are you talking about? The second printing is worth more. Why? If there's less copies of it, that makes it rare. It's harder to get. And then you had literally comic guys like, huh? What? You had other people coming from other, markets telling you how to do your own business. You never adapted that. Those second printings, I would pick those up for years. I would pick them up for years simply because, for my own collection, I would pick them up like, oh, because I wanted to be a completist and get everything. And then slowly but surely you realize, hey, it's harder to find these things. It's harder to find them, and that's pretty much what's going to drive the price. It's really weird because a lot of that mentality filtered over into comics, and they're still trying to sort out. And I almost forgot the last thing that really that's really putting a nail in the coffin for that old style of collecting are the graded comics. Because once it's graded, it's done. There's no more. I mean, you can haggle about the case. Oh, it's got a scratch on the case. You're like, yeah, whatever. Whatever. You can always take $15 and get a new case. That's pretty much that. It hasn't ruined the book. But once it became that it was graded, you got a third party, you can come in. Like, I'm at the show and this guy looks over one of the books and I'm saying this is about a 7.5. And he's like, I don't know, I think it's more like a 7.0 or maybe this, that, and the other. So I kind of give him a look that he needs to get away from me before I strangle him. But once you put a graded book, once the book is graded, that's it. There's no haggling over the grade any longer.
Hmm.
It's official. And if it's a big book, that price is not going anywhere. So it really did change a lot of that stuff. But the mentality, a lot of some of the guys that may have been they were collectors, they stopped and now they're getting back into it, and they really get some sticker shot at the end of the day. But milk doesn't cost 10 cents anymore. You can't get a loaf of
Oh,
can't get a loaf of bread for a quarter, and I don't you're not going to get a comic book for $1. That's a big book.
a haircut, a loaf of bread,
Yeah.
and all of that in the comic book all costs $10, or 10 cents. Sorry, excuse me, 10 cents. I guess one of the things that I guess the end, yeah, it's definitely harder to look at these sort of things because there was definitely a word of mouth collecting that was like, oh, not only do you have to get the death of Gwen Stacy, you have to get the Clone Saga. You need all of that and the last Jackal, all that stuff. Like that was there was a buzz around that, and it's like a buzz about every other Hulk issue, and include to some extent Wolverine just because it's a fun issue. But it's like more for that story and Wendy, that whole hook of the story, probably the death of Mimic, the death of what's the name, Cobalt Man. It's like these poignant stories that were in there that were just word of mouth stuff that you had to get. And then whereas now there was a period in the 80s and 90s where people didn't even understand Wolverine being his first appearance being in the Hulk. Like, why would people even do something like that? Like, did they want, like, almost talking like, did they want the character to fail, introducing him into the Hulk? You remember, the Hulk was drawn by, Al Milgrom at one point. Like, how good could it have been? Like that sort of thing, where like, oh, the Hulk, we're only here for the Hulk. I think that was also
That's terrible.
something. Who's that guy? Uh, um, that Harlan Ellison started putting through that Harlan Ellison was a part of like his stories being adapted to being him, the Hulk versus Cyclops in the first appearance of Jarella. And he was like, the Hulk is good when Peter David writes it, like basically to the fans writing off the Hulk smash Hulk when he's a part of those stories. Like he's like Roy Thomas translated one of his stories or the story that he gave him to the actual Hulk comic book and the classic characters that were used again that people remembered. But it's just one of those things where people don't look at this thing as they will. Oh well, they kind of know. Well, comic books are the old ones only worth stuff because they destroyed half of them. That's why Action Comics cost so much because people just destroyed all of them. Otherwise, they might be not worth that much. That's not the verbatim, but sort of that sort of feeling. That's why a lot of comic books are worth money because they destroyed them in the whole thing of how bad they were. Well, they destroyed them even before that. They just were like mulching them for a while.
Yeah, that's why they were called pulps.
And then they had the worst where they were literally trying to destroy them because they were killing
Yeah,
people.
but nobody was collecting them. So it wouldn't have mattered if they, well, of course, the war accelerated that, but nobody was collecting this stuff to the point like, oh, one day it's going to be. No, you kept it for as long as you wanted. Then eventually your mom was like, throw it out.
Well, that's the
You got.
thing. A lot of people would go to war. That's what happened to my stepfather. He went to the Korean War. He was in the Korean War. And when he came home to Georgia, his mother had already thrown out the comic books. And it was like, he's an adult. He's coming back, and you're like most people would do. You come back to your family home to your comic books, that sort of thing. So it's not that wasn't that prevalent, but there were people who were sticking with it, that sort of thing. So
You
it's
know that book you recommended to me? Was it Norse Myths
yes.
with Neil Gaiman?
Hmm.
So I'm at the show and I see this guy and he bought a copy of Norse Myths.
Hmm.
And I kind of perk up. He's not buying from me, but I just noticed he had bought some other stuff. And I said, "Oh, you got a copy of Norse Myth?" I was like, "That's great. If you want like some good reading at the end of the day." I was like, "Neil Gaiman wrote it. You got covers by arts by P. Craig Russell." I said, "You should have a lot of fun with that." And I could see the look in his eye. And I'm thinking because I told him that he's like, "Oh, this is probably worth some money." I'm like, "No." That book is probably worth the cover price, if that, if you get anything for it. I'm just saying, look, if you want, some good, that was money well spent. If you want something that you can read and you're going to be entertained by, and it's done very well, that's a good buy at the end. That's a good buy at the end of the day. But for the most part, I don't know. It has changed as to what the guys are willing to spend money on, and what they think they should be spending the money on, and it's still all over the place. Like the savviness, I have to admit, the last couple times I've done shows, I've actually seen younger people. I've seen younger cats coming out, and they're looking at it. But they're again, these are the guys who are looking at it. I don't know if they even read this stuff, but and at one point, and another point, I'm kind of like, I don't even know if that matters anymore.
Hmm.
But they're coming out, they were asking questions. What about buying this? What about buying that? And like I was like, hipping some guys to it. And one guy, he learned a really quick lesson. He learned a really quick lesson. I had a copy of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. I think this is like 100 and I can't remember the issue number exactly, but this is that classic one where she turns black for the issue.
Hmm.
I'm Curious Black was the title. So this was on a Saturday show. I did Saturday and Sunday. So he came on Saturday and saw the book. And he said, "Oh, how much is that?" I was like, "It's $100." So he probably didn't know the book offhand. Okay. He probably didn't know the book offhand or anything. Okay, fine. He came back the next day and he looked at the book, or at least what he thought was the same book. And he says, "Oh, that book's 100, right?" I was like, "No, that book's 400." He's like, "Huh? It was 100 yesterday." He was like, "That was a different book. Somebody bought that one."
Hmm.
Somebody bought that one. This is the other one, and this one is worth more money at the end of the day. And he was like, oh, I was like, yeah, you got to know your stuff. You got to know a good deal when you see it, so you can take advantage. Because you'll see these guys come out. Guy, was pulled out a copy of Mark Spector, Moon Knight 52, which
Mhm.
guys are looking at now. Why? Because of Werewolf by Night and Moon Knight coming out and so on and so forth. Great, the connection between the characters. So he picks the book up, and the second he has to go to his phone to look at the price, I start shaking my head. I was like, how can you haggle with me now? How can you haggle with me now? You probably went on your phone to go look up the price, and then you're going to ask me if it's worth 25. What are you going to say? Can you do 10? I'm like, I'm going to ask you, well, what did it say right over there? You just looked on your phone for the price. How much was the price over there? Was it 10 on your phone? No, it was 25. So why am I going to give it to you for 10? That sort of stuff too is what you see. Like, you got to know your stuff. You got to know good deals when you have it. You got to know what side. You have to know when you're getting good at something. You have to know when you've. But again, it also shows me where, okay, this guy's not ready for prime time. You're not ready for prime time at the end of the day. If you're going through the entire stock of somebody's books and you're supposedly a comic seller and you're not pulling anything out, okay, you're not pulling anything out because it's not something that again, you're putting yourself in this high end position where the only time you can sell, you got to get great books at dirt cheap prices, and that's the only time you can sell, which means you're not going to be in it for too long.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to say to close off?
Oh, you cheap bastards, get a job.
All right, spin a rack.
Out.